morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is a fool? A fool is someone who doesn't want to hear anything bad about ED, Chamisa, ZANU-PF, Triple C, and stupidly defend them while they and their families enjoy the fruits of politics. Worse, the idiot is not even known by the foresaid persons. Are you one of them? I think it's a pertinent remark to make in the context of Zimbabwe politics. Zimbabwe is a failed state, and it is us, the citizen, at the end of the day, we have dragged the nation into this mess. Yes, the leaders have played their role, but it must be said, we should have stopped them by now. 46 years after independence, these leaders have blundered from pillar to post, dragging the nation deeper and deeper into the abyss, and we've done nothing about it. Tonight, we'd like to focus on one specific issue: the problem with the opposition, the incompetence of the opposition. We have said on this platform that the primary purpose of the MDC, when it was launched in 1999, was to implement the democratic reforms necessary to end the de facto one-party state, the ZANU-PF one-party state. 26 years down the line, ZANU-PF is still blatantly rigging the elections and continues to rule the country, precisely because the opposition have sold out. And it is this failure to hear anything bad said about the opposition, Nelson Chamisa, that has led us to this. In the last few days, the media, the social media has been awash with the quarrel between Nelson Chamisa and the journalist Chin'ono. I just want to follow up on that one. What is it about that quarrel that we can learn something from it? And those who are defending Nelson Chamisa can stop the stupidity of defending the indefensible. Welcome to the program, Ben.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. You know, when we talk about an idiot, I always try and refer it to according to what the ancient Greek, philosophers put across. An idiot is one individual where even if you put, the most simple of evidence, they will refuse it. I mean, when you look at the history of our politics, you are looking at DC, ZANU-PF, and all sorts of other political parties that came from the opposition or emerged from that MDC. You can see that they have failed Zimbabwe. The evidence is there. What they have done, the corruption they have been involved in, you know. And, so sometimes you don't even have to bring it forward. It's the idiot knows. But they will just refuse just for the sake of, it is my leader. That boxer from the animal farm mentality. He can never be right. He can never be wrong. He has to be right. Whatever they say is right. No matter, you can try and bring facts, and you will never turn that person around. That is the true definition of an idiot. And when you go into various social media groups, platforms, many will be shocked how many of these idiots are there. And then you get to question to say, why is Zimbabwe a failed state? And the answer is pretty simple. With millions of idiots, what did we expect? Because for us to be a healthy and functioning democracy, we have to demand accountability from our leaders. We have to question them. But the idiot does not want. And the idiot overwhelms us. So we then find ourselves with a very, very, very difficult and, very dicey position to say, with all these individuals that hero worship, that have created a demigod out of an individual, how then can we go and approach, those that aspire or are holding, public offices, to account? It then becomes pretty much impossible if they overwhelm us like that. Hence why we find we are in this position we are right now, a failed state, a country 46 years in, and still cannot make head or tail, or whether we are going or we are coming back. It's a mess.
Well, I wanted to focus on one individual who has commented on this issue, and this is Brighton. One of the things that he said is Hopewell Chin'ono is a powerful, destructive force in Zimbabwe body politics. I think that is true. That cannot be denied. Hopewell is one individual who has had a lot of influence. And Brighton goes on to explain that he has got a lot of following in the social media, and that has made him extremely powerful. And his influence has been quite extensive. And he has used that influence to a captive audience, and sold himself to a captive audience. And he has been able to influence leaders, including Chiwenga, ED, Chamisa, Miti, Scala, and many, many others. I think that is quite evident. Hopewell was one of Mnangagwa's cheerleaders soon after the 2017 military coup. That is a historic fact. He was one of those individuals who was encouraging the people of Zimbabwe to give Mnangagwa a chance. And he was quite adamant about it. And judging from the social media following he had a lot of influence. And then later on, he broke away from Mnangagwa and he was supportive of Chamisa. And became one of his maybe undeclared advisors, particularly run up to the 2023 elections. What Brighton fails to appreciate here is that as much as one can say, yes, Chin'ono had influence with all these leaders, we cannot deny the fact that before Hopewell came onto the political scene, these individuals had already failed. He's talking of how Hopewell has managed to play one against each the other in the MDC Triple C leadership and divided them. That is true. But we cannot deny that the MDC leaders had already failed by this time. In 2008 to 2018, MDC leaders had the golden opportunity to implement the democratic reforms, and they failed to implement even one. Who are we going to blame? Chin'ono. I don't know whether he was already on the political scene, but I don't remember him playing a major role if he was. We have got to blame these opposition leaders themselves. We cannot keep on looking for scapegoats. The whole article, while it condemned Hopewell Chin'ono for selling out and being a hypocrite, it failed to balance that with the fact that the opposition leaders themselves, and indeed ZANU-PF leaders themselves, Mnangagwa, has proven to be corrupt, incompetent, and in the case of the opposition, liars and conmen. Without Chin'ono's help. And that is the emphasis I wanted to highlight.
For me, I believe, this debate between Hopewell and Chamisa is one of those endless debates out there that will just, in fact, they can go on forever. Just both sides arguing. Because you are looking at two individuals that are very corrupt, that are utterly useless, and that have not done anything to better Zimbabwe. Look, we have heard of, from ZANU-PF itself, their youth spokesperson, or I'm not sure what current position he holds, where he says people like Hobu, they go about, saying, bad things about ZANU PF, but they have actually been benefiting from ZANU PF. He went through ZANU PF to go and get his, piece of land extended, and so forth. That is corruption already right there. So you cannot then say he's squeaky clean, you know. So that debate to say, who is better, that's that is what way we can liken to say exactly like, a mouse being forced to choose between a cobra and a black mamba equally have devastating consequences. So you find now people are debating, some are in, Chamisa's camp, some are in Hope's camp. What is there to be achieved from such a debate? We all know their characters. If you were to put down, in one character this side and put the other character and list their characteristics, you will find that they're more or less, similar. Just like, a cobra and a black mamba. Maybe just that, the neurotoxins or whatever are different. But equally, they will kill you. Who will care whether you've died by, a different, toxin? Ain't nobody gonna care about it. But the fact that you're dead, then we care. So we have people that have now gone into overdrive. I mean, this debate has been there for, I think, now close to more than 2 weeks, ever since, Chin'ono put it out there. It's not going to end because people will try and defend. Like I said in the very beginning in my introduction, we have many and millions of idiots, and they love to engage in such, useless and meaningless debates. So it will continue and it will continue. And when it starts to dry up, something is going to get said to stir it up again. And then the debate goes on. And then thereby we are, missing on the important issues of, ZANU PF destroying our constitution, destroying our country, looting our country.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza kuti nawe akomana.
So
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza kuti nawe akomana.
Sorry about that, Ben. Sorry, go ahead.
So, we will always have distractions that will be created. Now, it is for individuals to try and, decipher to say, no, this is just noise that is wanting to take away our concentration from doing what needs to be done. And we all know what needs to be done. But debating to say Hopewell is right, so what if he's right? We all knew he was right, that Chamisa is a corrupt and incompetent leader. And Chamisa will go and defend to say, you Hopewell, you did this, you did that. We all knew he was also a corrupt and incompetent, leader. So what are we trying to do? Are we trying to compare who is more incompetent and who is more useless? What is there to be achieved from this debate? That is where the problem is with it. People do not ask themselves, okay, we are just debating. What is it that we are going to benefit from this debate? And whoever wins the debate, does that make them now competent? Absolutely not. So it's one of those time-consuming, useless, meaningless, and endless, debates to try and pull those idiots that we were talking about from the ancient Greek definition, the idiots that will try and defend their leaders no matter the cost. This is what is happening.
Well, my take on this one is, now that the issue is on the public out there as to what happened, let's resolve it. Take, for instance, the issue of, did Chamisa lie or not? This, particularly on this platform, we have had endless discussions on it. In 2023, Chamisa told the nation at large that he has plugged all the vote rigging loopholes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. People believed him in their millions, and they participated in the 2023 elections on that basis. We have said on this platform that had consequences. The consequences were that SADC, as much as SADC and the AU condemned the 2023 elections, the fact that millions participated meant those bodies could not deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy. So we have got to accept that he did lie, because ZANU-PF did go on to rig the elections, and denying it did not help. It doesn't help the nation. Indeed, he lied to the nation in 2018 when he said MDC alliance had stringent measures to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. People believed him. They participated. And by participating, gave ZANU-PF legitimacy. But people, by failing to realize that Chamisa had lied to them, meant 5 years later, he was able to repeat the same thing. We need to face the facts and deal with them honestly and settle the matter. Chamisa, in his response to these allegations by Chin'ono, he has gone to great lengths to explain this so-called strategic ambiguity. One of the accusations from Chin'ono was that CCC had failed as a party because they didn't have a constitution and didn't have structures. The fact that Chin'ono earlier on had actually been praising this strategic ambiguity is another matter. The immediate issue here was, he was saying that was the problem. Chamisa did not address any of those problems. He was talking of who, or some of his supporters were talking of, who are you, Chin'ono, to be asking for CCC's constitution? It should be given to the members only. Members do not have it. And I think as a public body, CCC was contesting in public for election to be a party. It's accountable to the people of Zimbabwe. He should address those problems. He did not. And he has since come back and said, I had taken this unusual and uncharacteristic step to set the record straight. He didn't set the record straight. He didn't answer any of the issues raised. And the problem with it is that the issues themselves have not been dealt with properly. So this debate will carry on. That's number one. Number two, you will repeat the same mistakes. Chamisa is talking of forming a new party. If you have not resolved the problem, admitted that you need a constitution, you form another party. Are you going to have a constitution? Is it going to be made public? Are you going to have elected officials? That has not been resolved. So we'll carry on, make the same mistakes again. This is the cycle we have got to break. The issue is on the table now. Let's address it and deal with it properly and not try to dodge the issues. Like I said, one of the problems was before even Hopo stepped on the political stage, MDC CCC leaders had failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU. That had nothing to do with Hopo Chin'ono. And it has everything to do with their own incompetence. And one of the explanations given, which Ben referred to, was that they were bribed. MDC leaders were bribed. And indeed, Hopo Chin'ono himself was bribed, as we hear from this video clip.
Bhazi rikafira musango, munhu asina kwaari kuenda mubhazi mumu anofara kuti ndo patopumba pake nditori nevamwe vangu pana. Munhu anorwadziwa nekurara musango munhu ane kumba.
Taibadana kumba kwangu.
But amana kumba kugombezi rangu reriya. Mana so. But munhu asina imba atete kurara musango. So opposition ino make sure kuti vanhu vaya vawane minda. But may he so rest in peace vatsvangirai. Prazi ravo vanga vainaro. Chamisa anaro.
Anaro Chamisa. Ane family.
Kana azoramba. Ndoenda newe.
Rikupi.
Ane fam.
Ribi.
I know madress munhu anetsa kuti focha, but anaro chakudza off camera.
Okay.
Ane mine. Ane mine. Ane makaseo.
Yeah?
Yes. Biti. Ane prazi. Hauna kumboona here picture yabiti achitenga mombe kuna Temba Mliswa. Zekuisa kuprazi. One of the biggest beef producers in the Matabeleland region, the Washman Ngwe.
Okay.
Yes, ane prazi. Ana utenga beneficiary land reform. But what they did is to discourage their people from acquiring farms. Because why is that munhu akaona something chapiwa nehurumende achapikisa.
Are you for real, Mr. Gansha?
Nomubvunza Washman Ngwe kuti haasi kuita beef here, producer beef here paprasi. Ndonyaya ndainetsana Hopo Chin'ono gore rere. Handiti kuti stand ya Hopo Chin'ono standard ine painogumira. But vakatotaura nehurumende nemasabhuku ikaextendwa because aita god.
These are real issues that must be addressed. The issue of whether or not these MDC leaders were bribed by ZANU-PF during the GNU cannot be swept under the carpet. This must be addressed. Chamisa and company must address those issues before we can move on. He's talking of, I've wasted enough time on this issue and now moving on to the other. You haven't addressed those issues. We need those issues resolved for us to move on. Did you and your fellow MDC leaders receive the bribes? We have said on this platform that MDC CCC leaders have been participating in flawed elections out of greed. This is the greed we are talking about. We can't sweep that under the carpet. If those stories are not true, let's deal with them so that we can find out, then why did you participate in flawed elections? particularly when you knew the elections are flawed and you knew participating would give ZANU-PF legitimacy. Those are the issues that we, as much as we want to sweep them under the carpet and move on, those issues will not go away. And those who want to pretend somehow we can still carry on, they are not being honest.
You know, for me, this is a case of there is no honor among thieves. None at all. If we are going to expect either Hopewell Chin'ono or Nelson Chamisa to come up and assassinate their own characters, I think we will be in for a very long wait. I mean, I can give an example of Nelson Chamisa. I mean, he was even asked, by, during an interview with BBC, when he claimed that, he had met Donald Trump and Donald Trump had promised him billions of dollars if he won the election, and that every problem in Zimbabwe would be soon wiped away. And when he was asked, the question was right in front of him. You could see the man was lying. That is his character. And for us to deny that he was lying, that is where the problem is. Us, the people of Zimbabwe, the citizens of Zimbabwe that are defending, when he was asked and when he said it, the evidence is there. You were standing on a platform, you were saying it. And he says, some people said it. Yet you can see it is you. So this is the type of person that you are dealing with. A liar, a serial liar, pathological liar. Now you are asking, he should come up and say, I lied to you. And when he promised that he would deliver the 2023 elections, as soon as after he lost those elections, he says, I am taking a sabbatical. And nobody could stop him. And he went, left us singing the blues, left his supporters hanging high and dry. And this is the same man that when people went out and demonstrated at one point, he called them mad. Nobody, we don't need a Hopewell Chin'ono to tell you about Chamisa. We all know because it's a fact. It is there. He said this, he said that, he was there. So you don't need anybody to tell you. Then you can go to on the other side. Hopewell Chin'ono is not clean as well. He's been here and there, both in the MDC, supporting Chamisa's crazed ideas, supporting ED's crazed ideas. And here we had, he was part and parcel of a corrupt act, extending his stand in an unusual and illegal way, abusing an office, abusing connections. These are the type of politicians that we are dealing with. And to then try and say, let them come out and confess. These are not people that will come out and tell you that they did it. Rather, they would want to assassinate each other. There is no honor among thieves. It's easy to point the finger at somebody else and say, you did this. Yet you were doing exactly the same thing. So we are in a debate that could last years as long as somebody comes up and drops new allegations on the other, the debate is on. It's just, a fire that is already there. All you need to do is just add, coal or wood. It will continue. We have seen, we're all Zimbabweans. We have seen some fire, from in a particular household can actually go on an entire year without having to restart it. Just adding a few coals here and there, it will go on. This is the type of that fire. There is nobody that will come out and tell us that they did what they did. But if we use the evidence that is there and the facts that are already there, Wilbert, if you play the video of Chamisa standing up and saying that he met Donald Trump, and that you can see for yourself that this is Chamisa saying that. And in the interview, when he is asked, you can see that he was caught between a rock and a hard place, and he couldn't answer. But what he could do was just to deny. It's the same thing that is happening here. He cannot answer to say whether the Constitution was there, whether what was there. He'll have to just deny and move it on to the next thing. And we will be caught in this year thing for a very long time. Yet, the important thing, I think the most important thing that Zimbabweans need to be discussing is the way forward out of this mess without these criminals. That is the way forward. Otherwise, all this year, we are in for a long, long, long ride of debating absolutely useless and meaningless and an endless debate.
ende patakasangana naTrump akatibvunza kuti naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza kuti naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election, $15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Kasangana na Trump akatibvunza kuti naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
I think the main message from that video clip is that Chamisa lied. And the journalists, in this particular case, the BBC Hard Talk journalists, would not let him off the hook. Unlike some of our own journalists, much worse, the so-called Chamisa Chete brigade members, who would have accepted him dodging answering the question. The journalists got to the bottom of it. Let's get this clear. You did not see Donald Trump. And he had finally to admit that, yes, he did not see him. He was lying. And the message that the journalists wanted to convey is that Chamisa was lying. This was in 2018, before the 2018 elections. If the ordinary Zimbabwean supporters, more notably the so-called Chamisa Chete brigade, had been paying attention. Then 5 years later, when Chamisa tried to lie to them again, they would have been aware of it and resisted it. The whole point here is we keep repeating the same mistakes because people are not paying attention. People are not following through issues. As much as Chamisa would want to move on, as he clearly states in his latest posting there, my focus now is where it belongs, building #the new, advancing the struggle for change and fighting for the citizens' government in our lifetime. That's nonsense. When you lied and conned people to participate in these flawed elections, and you do not want to admit that you had lied to the people and want them to carry on, at the time you were telling them Triple C was going to win big, even invoked the name of God. #God is in it. This is God's plan. And God's plan do not fail. People believed it. What happened? You were lying. And you landed the nation in a mess. And you are now back with the same lie. I notice in his latest here, he still uses the #God is in it. God has never been in any of Chamisa's lies. And we need to get to the bottom of this before we move on. To let him lie and let people forget that he has been lying to them is the biggest mistake we can make in this case. Chamisa is a liar and a conman. He's corrupt, he's incompetent. The MDC was formed to implement democratic changes to stop ZANU-PF rigging elections. As the party name itself implies, the movement for democratic change. After 26 years, ZANU-PF is still able to blatantly rig the elections. Because MDC leaders sold out. MDC leaders are ZANU-PF Team B in all but name, playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have legitimacy. And for Chamisa and company to keep sweeping those failures under the carpet, and we let them, is the biggest mistake this nation can make. To move forward, people have to accept that MDC, Chamisa and company are corrupt, incompetent, liars, and conmen. Because only when they've accepted it will they fail, will Chamisa fail to lie to them and con them again. You have to accept that Chamisa is a liar if you're going to stop believing him. To say, let's move on anyway, let's leave that one to the past, is making a big mistake. Because until you have accepted that he's a liar, you will keep on believing him. And he is exploiting that very weakness. This issue, I agree, will be discussed over and over again. But it's only because people don't want to get the bottom of it. The issue is on the table. Let's address it. Let's resolve it so we can move on to another issue. To leave it after receiving a wishy-washy explanation from Chamisa is nonsensical. As for Hopewell, Hopewell is a journalist. If people choose to keep on believing his double talk, it's their problem. Chamisa is different. He is a public official holding elected public office. He must account for what he did. But he and his colleagues, Tendai Biti, Welshman, Ngube, David Coulthard, what they've been doing. And for those who think that there is a choice here between believing Hopewell Chin'ono or Nelson Chamisa, I totally agree with what Ben has been saying here. This is like asking a mouse to choose between a black mamba and a cobra. Both of them, Hopewell Chin'ono, we know he has played his cards supporting Mnangagwa. And when it suited him, he supported Chamisa. And now he has fallen out with Chamisa. Hopewell is a hypocrite. Chamisa is a liar, a conman, corrupt and incompetent. There is no choice here. It's a false choice. A mouse does not pick between a cobra and a black mamba because both snakes means death. The more rational choice for the mouse is to choose to live, escape. Why some people think they've got a choice of believing Chamisa or Hopewell Chin'ono beggars belief. It clearly shows that you have not followed the argument. You believe Chamisa to what end and purpose? To participate in another flawed elections, to give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship? Some of the things that Hopewell Chin'ono has said is true. But we must also be smart enough to realize that he has also said a lot of untrue things in the past. It's not a choice of believe the Hopewell Chin'ono or believe Chamisa, nor is it a choice of, well, let's forget that story and move on, as Chamisa would like to us to do. These issues must be resolved. The issue of him lying to the people of Zimbabwe, calling them to participate in flawed elections, must be resolved. The issue of whether or not he and his colleagues were bribed by ZANU-PF so that they don't implement even one token reform when they had the golden opportunity to do so, must be resolved. We are not going to move on until those issues are resolved. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
I remember an interview that was given by the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, where he says when the Zambian president then was Chiluba wanted to extend his stay in power, as SADC, they had to call a meeting. And this meeting was to look for the cleanest amongst themselves that could go and talk to the Zambian president at that time. To say, no, what you are about to do is not right. We will not tolerate it as a regional body. Why I am talking about this is we are looking at two characters, Chamisa and Hopewell. These are not the cleanest characters that we can send to the other to demand accountability and get the answers to our questions. They are not. It will never, and I've always said this, it's going to be an endless debate. And what we don't need in Zimbabwe is endless debates. We are into, let's find the solution. I mean, an issue is okay for us to debate. Did, Triple C have a constitution? All those things. They're important to discuss. But if you go about having the leader of the conversation being Chin'ono, who is equally just as bad and actually supported this at some point. I mean, look, it's not going to end. And it's not going to give us any answers. Because look, this debate has been on for plus 2 weeks now. And we haven't even gotten any closer to any form of accountability. Rather, it's just a matter of when it's starting to die down, stir it up a bit. When it's starting to die down, stir it up a bit. And we will get to 2030 discussing the useless things and forgetting that in 2030, Zimbabwe is going to go into an election. An election that, an election process that has already been condemned by international bodies, international standards, that has been condemned by even our own constitution. We're not debating about that. And at the time when we want to debate, the election is over. And that's too late. So then the question is, what was more important? Finding out whether they lied or not, and of which I have always told, these are type of people that will not admit that they were wrong. They would lie. They would lie through their teeth. They would lie. If they can lie on hard talk, surely they can find it very easy to lie on social media or on at rallies, because nobody answers any questions at those points. So we are spending time on things that we already know. This is where my problem is. We already know because we have the facts. We have the truths already in our hand. What type of character is Chamisa? We know. What type of character is Opo? We know. What type of character is ED, the president? We know. So what are we then debating? What do we want to find out that we already don't know in the file that we hold in our hand and in our heads? I think there is bigger issues that Zimbabweans need to deal with, especially with this curve 3. We are at a point where all democratic doors have just been shut. And we are on about, people's characters. People that we already know that their characters are very flawed. These are corrupt criminals. These are, pathological liars. We all know that. There's nobody that cannot deny that they have heard Chamisa lying. There is nobody that can say that. There is nobody that doesn't know some of the shady dealings that Hopewell has been, doing. There is nobody that doesn't know that. Let us deal and focus our energy before we wear ourselves out with the meaningless debate that we already have answers to. Thank you.
Zimbabwe is a failed state. And I think that is the reality that should be the anchor of our discussions. If millions of Zimbabweans believed Chamisa is a liar in 2023, then they would not have participated in the flawed elections that year. They take it back to 2018. Chamisa lied that he had stringent measures to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. They believed him, and that is why millions participated. Whether we care to admit it or not is another matter. The reality is there are millions of Zimbabweans out there who are incredibly naive, ignorant, and gullible. And they have been conned again and again to do foolish things. They have participated in flawed elections because they believed Chamisa when he told them that he has plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. He's going to win big. He has even evoked the name of God. Hashtag God is in it. And millions have believed it. Those are the millions that we have to address. Because if he can con them again to participate in the next elections, we will be where we are today. Stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, tyrannical regime, which would have given legitimacy by the millions participating in those flawed elections. Many people out there, from my assessment, believe Chamisa's explanation. And some of them are arguing the same argument that if Chin'ono's criticism is valid, he should start his own party. This has nothing to do with starting his own party. This is everything to do with Chamisa and BT and Welshman who were being elected public officials who must be accountable to the people. And each time they are being forced to account for them, what they've done, for them to turn around and say, well, start your own party, that is totally unacceptable. You are an elected official. You were elected to implement the democratic reforms necessary to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. Now you must account for why 26 years after the launch of MDC, ZANU-PF is still able to blatantly rig elections. Chamisa would want to move on, but it is imperative that we tell him in no uncertain terms that we are not moving on until these issues are resolved. Did you or did you not receive bribes from ZANU-PF? And the people themselves must have those answered. Because if the answer is, yes, I received bribes, then the people should stop following such a leader. Those who say that is irrelevant is because they don't want to have to deal with the question. To go back to the example of the black mamba and the cobra, the mouse that says, well, I don't want to know whether a black mamba is more poisonous than a cobra or is even poisonous, is being foolish. You know, you want to know. You should know what kind of leaders you've been electing, because you're the one who is suffering the consequences of failed leadership. MDC CCC leaders as ZANU-PF Team B in all but name. The answer that Chamisa will give on those pertinent questions raised will help the public, the Zimbabwe public, decide whether or not Chamisa and company are indeed ZANU-PF Team B or not. And this is the reason why we must insist that they answer the questions. They cannot get away with a wishy-washy answer on these issues. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good night.